Welcome to the SBR NHL Ice Guys. It's Thursday, March 15th. I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. Yes, it's the NCAA tournament. Yes, I know you're all excited for it, but the NHL doesn't go to sleep, and we don't go to sleep because of the NCAA tournament. So we've got shows, we've got NHL on a daily basis, and we're going to continue breaking it down right here on the Ice Guys 3 days a week, joined by Andrew McGinnis, Dana Lane, and Alex B. Smith. Let's get right down to business on this Thursday slate and start with Columbus taking on Philadelphia, 1-2 on the rotation. Philadelphia about minus 120 to minus 125 here at home. The total 5.5 shaded about minus 125 on the under in this hockey game, and the under's been the prevailing theme this year between these two teams. Three meetings between the Flyers and Jackets, all of them 2-1 decisions. Two of those games won by the Flyers, one of them win for the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Columbus is a team that is starting to turn things up a little bit as they try to cement their spot in the NHL postseason. 5 straight victories for the Columbus Blue Jackets as they enter this game against the Philadelphia Flyers, playing solid hockey. Flyers, on the other hand, not so much. They had a 5-game losing streak. They snapped it with a win on the weekend against the Winnipeg Jets, but could not sustain it against the Vegas Golden Knights on Tuesday, a 3-2 home loss. Outshot the Knights in that game 40-29, but a solid performance in net from Marc-Andre Fleury that night. Philadelphia unable to capitalize enough on their opportunities, and they fall short 3-2. So we'll see if they can bounce back from that. We know the Jackets do have a couple injury notes that you want to be aware of. Matt Calvert didn't play last game. However, he is expected to return tonight for the Jackets. Seth Jones was forced to leave the last game with an upper body injury. He's also probable, so not bad enough to keep him out of the lineup. John Tortorella expecting Seth Jones to be in there. Philadelphia Flyers are all another banged up team, particularly on the back end. Robert Hagg, Johnny Oduya, two guys dealing with injuries there for the Philadelphia Flyers on their blue line. So something you want to be aware of. So a couple of injuries on both sides here of the equation headed into this game. Personally, for me, I've got no problems going in and taking a little bit with Columbus here at plus 105, like the form right now with this Blue Jackets team. And a team that playing some good hockey, trying to cement their position in the playoffs. Every game, not a must-win, but every game important. There should be a sense of urgency these last 3 weeks of the season for Columbus, and definitely defensively, where they had gotten out of their way a little bit. I think they had just not really played as well at that end, the defensive end of the ice, for a period of time there. Well, they've gotten back to it. I mean, they've played much better the last several games during this win streak. They've allowed 2 goals or less 4 of their last 5 games. Better defensive hockey being played by Columbus. And then you on the flip side, you look at the Philadelphia Flyers struggling a bit defensively, dealing with a couple injuries too on the back end. So if I can get Columbus at any plus price here, I'm definitely interested. So I'll be on Columbus here at the plus 105 price as a small road underdog. See if they can make it 6 straight wins tonight as they take on the Philadelphia Flyers. Andrew McGinnis has a play as well on this Jackets Flyers game to kick off the card on this Thursday. Andrew, what are you looking at here in this game tonight?
Yeah, Ian. Well, you know what? I've really liked the way that I've seen Columbus play recently, and for that reason, I'm looking at the over right now. And as far as Philadelphia goes, I think they're one of the most up and down teams. I find them so hard to read sometimes because one week they're one team, one week they're a complete different team. So it's why we follow it on a daily basis. It's why we do our research. It's why we look over these games. But this is a Columbus team that I'm kind of used to projecting as a low scoring team, as a team that's tight defensively, this and that. But if you look at the last couple of games here for them, I know it's just Montreal, but back on March 12th, they defeated them 5-2. Then against Detroit, 3-2 against Colorado, 5-4 against the Golden Knights. They're able to put up 4 goals against them. The Sharks, 4 goals. A couple of games back between that, Washington, 5 goals. The point being is Columbus is starting to figure themselves out. I mean, it's not like they're just only getting scored on as well, but they're really finding a way to put the puck in the back of the net. And for me, that's kind of impressive for this team because I just strictly don't think that's kind of their identity. That's what they are. They're not one of those teams that kind of goes for those track meet style games. I'm not used to hearing of them kind of going so deep into games and putting up those high amount of numbers. And for me right now, I think Philadelphia, these next couple of games are really crucial for them right now. They're trying to decide and put their identity out there for what they are, who they're going to be, because for me, this team has to try and develop any kind of consistency. I mean, ever since dating back to when Mrazek got out traded over. I mean, the first 5 or 6 games after he was traded, everyone thought, the sky was falling, everything was great. Something crazy was happening because goaltending was great. Every star was playing well. They looked like a solid team. Then all of a sudden, it started to come down a little bit, come down, come down, come down. But now that the all-star players are stepping up, but one thing about this Philadelphia team I've never really found is their depth. And right now, I'm looking at their line combinations, and I need that to happen. I need the second and third lines to really step it up. I need these guys to really, not just rely on Giroux, not just rely on Couturier, not just rely on Konechny, because ultimately this Philadelphia team can't be successful with just one or two guys putting the puck in the back of the net every single time. So for me, I think this is an exciting game. This is a big game for Philadelphia. Columbus is playing really well right now. They know how to score these days, and they've been scoring in Philadelphia as the total's gone over in Columbus's last 8 games from playing on the road in Philadelphia. It's also gone over in 4 of Columbus's last 6 games on the road in general. So for me, guys, kind of going a little bit against the grain here. A lot of the stats point towards the under between these two teams right now. But the over is 6-1-1 in their last 8 meetings in Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia and Columbus have a good performance tonight. Keep the score high and give us a pretty entertaining hockey game. So over 5.5 for me.
All right, over 5.5 in this game for Andrew. Jackets taking on the Flyers. See how that one unfolds. I'm on the Columbus side. We've got Toronto, Buffalo, 3-4 on the rotation. Next game up, we've got Toronto laying about -145 in this game, in that range. The total 5.5 shaded a little bit to the over, about -115 in this matchup. Toronto on the second night of back-to-backs after a bizarre game, you could say, against the Dallas Stars last night. Toronto gets out to a quick start. Dallas roars back with 4 unanswered, and then the Leafs roar back after that, tie it up. Dallas goes ahead. Toronto ties it again. 6-5. It ends up Toronto in a shootout. Wild game. Odd game. Some weird plays in that game. A bad goal given up by Kari letting him in early in that game. Mishandled the puck. You had a situation where Freddie Anderson leaves that game with some kind of injury. It's a minor one. It's only going to be a day-to-day thing, but it's enough that it took him out of the game, put Curtis McElhinney in. He had to finish the game last night, and he'll be the starter tonight for the Toronto Maple Leafs in Buffalo. This was going to be his scheduled start. Before all of that happened last night, he was going to play this game anyway on the second night of back-to-backs, but now it definitely reinforces that, the fact that Anderson got injured in that game. He won't even be available. They've called up Garrett Sparks to back up McElhinney from the AHL for this game tonight as they take on Buffalo. Toronto's a weird team right now. Toronto's not a team I'm rushing to lay of -145 with on the road. Toronto's in one of these weird spots right now in terms of the standings where they can't go up, or very unlikely that they go up. They're not going to catch the Boston Bruins. I mean, that's not happening. Not the way Boston's going right now in the Atlantic Division. When you can come back and beat Carolina 4-1 down and you beat them 6-4 the other night, that tells you how good you're playing. They're 7 up on Toronto right now, and they've got 2 games in hand on the Leafs as well. So Toronto's not catching Boston. Toronto is pretty much cemented, set in stone that they're going to be third in the Atlantic. So they really can't advance their position with these last 12 games of the regular season. So what is the motivation right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs? I don't know. And you see it sometimes in games with them lately. They don't play the full 60 minutes. They take a period off. They take a shift off. We saw that again last night against Dallas. So, no, this is not the right price range for me with Toronto. I know they're better than Buffalo. I understand that. I know it's the Sabres, but to me, no. It's Buffalo or pass. I don't want Buffalo here either, to be honest, but I'm just warning you. With Toronto in these price ranges against bad teams, be careful. There's not a lot to go out there and bust your tail for. If you're the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, you're locked into third in the Atlantic, and all you're waiting to figure out is who am I going to play in that first round series? Am I going to play the Boston Bruins or am I going to play the Tampa Bay Lightning? So they can't move up and they can't fall down. So just be very, very leery. You just wonder if you're going to get Toronto's A game on a nightly basis, and you better know you're going to get it. You're going to lay this kind of price on the road with anybody. So for me, it's a weird game, interesting one to talk about, not a great one to bet. So I won't be involved in this one. So we'll move on to the next one. Washington, New York Islanders, 5-6 on the rotation. We've got Washington -140 to -145. Total 6 shaded to the over here, about -120 in this hockey game, as you'd expect. The Islander games continue to be a little bit taxed towards the over, even though they've not quite been that over machine they were earlier this season when they were just flying over the total, it seems, hand over fist night after night. It was just one high-scoring game for the Islanders after another. It has calmed down just a little bit in recent games. Washington Capitals off 2 straight wins. They've wrapped up their West Coast road trip on the weekend with a 2-0 shutout win against the San Jose Sharks. Followed that up, returning home with a 3-2 win against Winnipeg. So Washington trying to show that they can get on a little bit of a roll here as the season winds down. The New York Islanders, on the other hand, a 5-2 win against the Calgary Flames the other night. A game in which they were outshot 52-27. But suddenly the New York Islanders have found a guy that's apparently able to, at least for the current moment in time, just stand on his head on a nightly basis, and that's Christopher Gibson. He's a guy that's just recently been brought up to this organization. Halak and Grice have had their issues. Of course, the defense has been miserable, hasn't helped them out one iota. I understand that, but at the same time, the goaltending still hasn't been fantastic. Still, you'd like to see it be better. And Gibson's come in and been very, very good, actually, for this New York Islanders team since he's been in there and gotten the starts. He's given them a chance on most nights. Problem is, the offense has started to slow down just a bit for the New York Islanders. That 5-goal outburst was a rarity for them. Prior to that, they had scored 3 goals or less in 9 straight games. So not quite that potent, clicking offense that we've seen earlier this season. Islanders also, when you look at it, still dealing with a couple injuries as well. We know Grice out, which is why it's Halak and Gibson, although lately it's been Gibson getting most of the starts for this New York Islanders team. Now they return home off a 4-game road trip. And when you go back and look now, they were at last 10 games at Carolina, home to Minnesota, at Toronto, at New Jersey, at Montreal, home to Montreal, at Pittsburgh, at Vancouver, at Edmonton, at Calgary, now back home. What does that mean? That means they've had 10 straight games where they've had to travel between games. You know, they've had a venue change, a city change. That's a lot of travel over a 10-game period of time. So not exactly something I'm thrilled to see. This is a little steep for me to lay with Washington. It's my lean. To me, I'm not in love with this Washington Capitals team still, but I'd still prefer that side personally over the New York Islanders tonight if I were to bet that game. Dana Lane, Washington, New York Islanders. This game has made it onto your card tonight. What do you see happening here in Brooklyn?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting in the postseason because this is obviously a Capitals team that nobody thought was going to be a team that you would have to fear this season. Of course, they won the President's Trophy last year and were dismissed by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and everybody thought, well, this is going to be the year where they're not only not going to win the President's Trophy, but which they probably won't, but we might not have to worry about they even making the playoffs. Well, they're going to make the playoffs, and not only are they going to do that, perhaps this is a different way just to go into the postseason where everybody has their guard down instead of their guard up, and they're still as offensively efficient as anybody in the National Hockey League, and that doesn't mean dangerous, because there's a complete difference between them being dangerous and efficient, and all we have to do is look on their shots on net. And I think if you told the average fan that the Washington Capitals were last in the National Hockey League in shots on goal, I think they'd look at you a little bit funny, but yet that's exactly where they're at. But offensively, they're in the upper half of the league, so that means that they are methodical in the way that they and when they get their chances, they bury them, but they are not just shooting pucks to the net, and that's a lot different than the Washington Capital team that we've seen of the last 2 seasons, where basically the MO was get the puck to the net and get some greasy goals in front, and get Ovechkin over to the left slot area and let him rip it. I mean, that was basically their offense. So a little bit different this year, but they're still by far a very dangerous team, and in fact, they are starting to get some production from their blue line. John Carlson is getting some goals, so that's always good. I mean, we see a lot of really good teams that get no production from their blue line, and Washington's really not one of those teams. And if they come up to bite somebody in the postseason, I think it's going to be because people just don't take them as seriously as they had in the past. I don't think there's much suspense whether or not the Islanders are going to make the playoffs, obviously. But I don't think that this team has quit. There's a lot of guys that are being evaluated for next season, and that includes Gar Snow and Doug Waite. I mean, these are guys that may not be around next season. I know there's a big push to get Gar Snow out. There has been for a while. So we'll see what happens after the postseason or after the end of the season. And maybe, with the John Tavares issue coming up and his contract and getting him to sign, maybe Gar Snow staying or leaving has a huge impact on his decision. This Islander team is obviously the worst offensive team in the league. Yes, they've slowed down or a defensive team in the league, but yes, they've slowed down offensively. But I still see three lines there that I can still feel good about, that even though they're not going well right now, that they will eventually. So I still think that I can get offense from them. And in many ways, anytime the Islanders are involved, it's just an automatic overlook in most cases for me. And certainly when you get both teams that are going to create a pace of play that is going to lend itself to the over way more than itself to the under. So I'm going to go Washington and the Islanders over 6 minus $1.15.
All right, over 6 for Dana with the Capitals and the Islanders, and they did get over the total their last game. Which, what's their current last 10 games? Let me see. Okay, they're 5-5, or 50% over under. So yeah, it's slowed down a bit, but you're still getting some overs. You're getting a nice mix now. You're not instead of before. So over 6 minus 120. Washington, New York Islanders for Dana. His play with the Capitals taking on the Islanders. Next game, we've got Boston, Florida, 7-8. This should be a good hockey game, actually. We know Florida's looking for every point they can get as they try to squeeze their way into the playoffs. They're battling for a wild card spot. And Boston just I don't know how this team's doing it. It's amazing. Minus 130, Boston on the road, total 5.5. Shaded to the over, minus 130. I mean, every excuse in the world to say, hey, it's not our night for the Boston Bruins the other night against Carolina. Lots of injuries, people banged up, a lot of guys out, down 4-1. But nope, resilience paves the way to an incredible third period comeback. And if you happen to watch that game, or at least watch parts of that game. I didn't see the whole game, but I saw parts of it. I certainly saw most of the third period comeback. You got the Boston Bruins Nesson feed. I don't think I've ever heard Jack Edwards. He was like an ecstasy. I mean, he was going absolutely insane. One of the biggest homer play-by-play men you'll ever hear in your life. I mean, that guy was just going absolutely bonkers for that comeback win for the Boston Bruins. Him and his buddy, the Boards, on the power play. Andy Brickley, his partner there in the booth there, very, very happy to see the Boston Bruins come back in that game and in stunning fashion come back and beat the Carolina Hurricanes. And like I said, I mean, that was a Boston Bruins team that was also undermanned going into that hockey game. We know they've had no Bergeron for a while. Torrey Krug, of course, banged up, had to leave that last game. Charlie McAvoy's been out now for a period of time. And just when you think things are maybe starting to get better a little bit, now 2 more can be added to that list in Jake DeBrusk, who left that game, didn't finish it the other night. He's questionable now tonight with an upper body injury. And Zdeno Chara, Big Z, on that blue line, upper body injury for him. And he's questionable tonight for the Bruins. So you are talking about a war of attrition right now, as much, if not more, than a war with the other team on a nightly basis for the Boston Bruins. But somehow, some way, they overcame it. 6-4, incredible third period rally for them in Carolina. Is there a letdown off that? I have no idea, but I know one thing. I'm not going against Boston. Injuries be damned right now. They've found ways to overcome adversity. They found ways to rise up over these injuries. And who knows? I wouldn't put it past them, is all I'm saying, that maybe they can't do it again tonight against the Florida Panthers. And Florida, off a stinker against Ottawa, 5-3, you'd expect them to be in a bad mood, want to bounce back. Clearly, they had a bunch of tough games lately. They played some good opposition, and just one of those games where right away you knew Florida was not really well prepared to play that game. They were making mistakes in their own zone, coughing the puck up, just not very sound in terms of body position, stick position in the defensive zone, and it cost them against the Ottawa Senators, who are suddenly a very scary offensive team. What a week for Ottawa. 5 goals against Florida, 7 the other night against Tampa Bay. So Ottawa Senators, at least on the offensive side, showing you that they haven't packed their tent and gone home yet this season. So impressive output this week offensively for the Ottawa Senators. Florida felt that the other night. I would expect them to bounce back with a much better effort here tonight. I actually looking at this game under the total, if I can get, especially if I can get 6, and I see a 6 out there under -113 at Heritage Sports for this game. That's definitely something that kind of interests me. I think Boston, after that wild game, they fell behind 4-1. They rallied 6-4. I think you're going to see them try to slow things down just a little bit. And I think Roberto Luongo and the Florida defense, which had been pretty good lately, wasn't good the other night. They may be looking to fix that a little bit tonight. So personally, if I'm going to look at this game from a totals perspective, definitely looking under the total. And it is worth noting 2 of the last 3 meetings between these two teams, including 3 straight games between these two teams in Florida, have gone under the total. So I like that 6 that's sticking out there at Heritage Sports, under 6 -113. That's the way I'm going to go here with the Bruins and Panthers tonight. Alex B. Smith, this is his first game. Bruins and Panthers. What do you see going on here in this one?
Well, I'm actually looking at Florida here in this spot. I think this would be, like I said, every point is crucial for them. I really don't think they're going to be able to earn enough to get a wild card spot out at this point. But like I said, they're still fighting, and they're one of the better home teams. I mean, you saw them; they lost, at home against Ottawa in their last game. That was their first loss. It had an 8-game home win streak going on until that point. So, like I said, that's, had so many big games, and they've been playing, above their potential, in my opinion, above average. And now, they took a step back against Ottawa. I think now they're going to be fired up to play a good team, a playoff caliber team in Boston. Like I said, Boston, so many injuries, especially, we always talk about cluster injuries, something to worry about, especially on defense. No McAvoy, no Chara, now no Torrey Krug on that blue line. That's something that could be a bit of a concern, even though they've been winning, like I said, without a lot of their key players. I think tonight it could be a little bit tougher. I'm looking at Florida here at home as a home dog.
Yep, Florida, a home dog, good price. I mean, it really is, and they've been very good at home. And you're getting that price because Boston's just been a terror. That's exactly why you see Florida getting +110 at home in this game. Yeah, you do worry. I mean, that was just such a rousing comeback as Boston just, not saying there will be, because we've seen this buy into the flat spot thing for Boston, and it hasn't worked in the past. If there's ever going to be one, maybe it's this one after that kind of comeback the other night, because 4-1 to 6-4, incredible stuff the other night. Is Boston ready to be fully focused on this game? Well, we'll find out tonight. Pittsburgh, Montreal, 9:10 on the rotation here. We got Pittsburgh -175 to -180 as road favorites. The total pretty much 6 straight across the board in this hockey game. Pittsburgh Penguins losing last night to the New York Rangers 4-3 in overtime. Bit of a surprising loss, just because we know the New York Rangers sort of in a look toward the future kind of mantra right now. And Pittsburgh had a lead in that hockey game. That's the surprising part. Got out to a 2-0 lead. Rangers tie it up 2-2. Pittsburgh quickly gets back in front 3-2. And then the Rangers tie it up with a power play goal a couple of minutes after that. 3-3, and then they end up winning in overtime by a score of 4-3. So now you got Pittsburgh off a loss that I'm sure doesn't sit well with them. And now a Pittsburgh team that, they've lost 2 of their last 3. They lost in Toronto on Saturday night. They bounced back to beat Dallas, then lose last night by a score of 4-3 in overtime. Now you go on the road, play second night of back-to-backs here against this Montreal team. But from a back-to-back standpoint, it's not been terrible by any stretch for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They started out the season, Pittsburgh, playing really poorly on the second night of back-to-back games, but they've been better lately. They've now gotten that overall record. I think they started something like 0-6 first 6 games of the season playing second night of back-to-backs. They're 7-8 now on the season, second night of back-to-back games. So that tells you right there that they've been better in that role. Don't forget, after they lost at Toronto on Saturday, they played a back-to-back at home against Dallas on Sunday, bounced back with a great effort, 3-1 against Dallas, outshot the Stars 30-18, so they controlled the flow of that game pretty much from start to finish. And Pittsburgh is 4-3. Second night of back-to-backs off a loss this season, and that's the role they're in here tonight against Montreal. For me, obviously, if I like Pittsburgh, I'd have to go puck line at this point, lay the goal and a half here against this Montreal team. Montreal actually did have one of their better efforts last time out against the Dallas Stars, 4-2 win for them. Antti Niemi was very, very good in between the pipes for the Montreal Canadiens that night. Not surprising, let's not forget. Antti Niemi, a Dallas Stars cast-off. You think there might have been a little bit of a extra incentive to really bury his old team last night, hurt their playoff chances, and Antti Niemi was very, very good. Had a little chip on his shoulder playing that Dallas team the other night and played a really strong game in net for the Canadiens, leading his team to victory that night. It's time to get for him to get another start, Claude Julien. I know a lot of the time lately he's been Niemi one game, Charlie Lindgren the next, and back and forth. Enough with Lindgren. He's awful. He's been terrible lately. He's been absolutely horrendous. It's time to, this Niemi's showing you he's keeping your team and giving your team a chance to win games. Stick with him, and I'm thinking tonight he finally will realize that and have this drilled through his head that let's give Niemi a second straight start. We'll see, but that's why you got to keep an eye on your goalie confirmations, because especially with Montreal team, you'll never know what exactly they're going to do. From a Pittsburgh perspective, it was Casey DeSmith last night in net for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I would expect to see Tristan Jarry tonight. It is the second night of back-to-back games. Of course, Matt Murray's still out with a concussion, and from what I've heard, he's still not coming back anytime soon. So this is still Jarry and DeSmith for the foreseeable future for the Pittsburgh Penguins. I lean a little bit to the puck line on Pittsburgh here, but I'm probably going to stay off it just because, second night of back-to-backs here. And if Niemi does get the start, as much as he's been very, very susceptible in the past, he's not been that way lately. He's actually played very, very good lately for Montreal. So it all depends on the goalie situation there for me. Andrew McGinnis is involved, though, with the Penguins and Canadiens. Dana as well, and we'll get their thoughts on this game. We'll go to Andrew first. What do you see here in Montreal tonight?
Yeah, guys, one thing to start really that I can look at in this game is just, first of all, back to back or not, guys, I think flat out Pittsburgh's going to be pissed. I think that they're not going to be able to digest that loss from last night. I mean, that is absolutely pathetic, really, for a hockey team at that caliber. For that standard of a hockey team, you should absolutely be furious. I hope that coach, I hope that they got absolutely ripped last night in the locker room, because this just can't happen. This just literally can't happen for a back-to-back defending Stanley Cup champion team. And I know people can say, that stuff happens every now and then, but it's not one of those things that can happen if you're going to go back to that same situation again this year. And they're too talented of a team to lose to a bummy team that's almost like a friggin' farm team these days. I mean, they pretty much lost to a farm team last night, and somehow they were able to make something out of it. I mean, it was pretty sad to see that happen, and when it heads to OT, that was just not really a good finish. So look, I just think with the talent and the depth level of this team, I mean, no, it's second to none right now. I mean, down the middle, Crosby, Malkin, Brassard. I mean, Malkin's playing better than he has in years. I mean, he's looking amazing, looking young again, looking like everything is easy to him, coming so natural. The scoring ability just seems very easy. And then alongside everybody on the wings, let's not forget Kessel. He's down there on the third line with Brassard. That says something right there. You've got Phil Kessel on the third line. He's still playing well. And then you look at Carl Hagelin, Patrick Hornquist, Connor Sherry, Jake Gensel. Like, all these guys you can count on. It's not just one or two guys with this Pittsburgh Penguins team. And I'm telling you right now, I don't care if the trends are under for this series recently with Montreal and Pittsburgh. I do think the puck line could hit, but I like the over in this game. I think right now for the Montreal Canadiens, we all know it's an absolute shit show. We can go on and on about what the hell this Montreal Canadiens team has been doing all year, because I feel like they're just waiting for the draft at this point. I mean, you want to talk about GMs getting called on for tanking in the NBA right now? I think Mark Bergevin should do everything he can that these guys don't win games. I mean, realistically, what are they really doing right now? What is their team? What are their lineups even looking like? I mean, it's an absolutely disgrace. I mean, so some of their players that are on their second line right now wouldn't even be on the fourth line for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, to me, I don't even, Niemi's been looking all right, but I don't think it's anything to get too excited about. And, as far as the whole Lindgren situation goes, I think that, he plays great some games and all of a sudden he's a complete different guy. But I also think that has something to do with, the insecurity of not knowing, when you're going to be back in the AHL, when you're going to be up and down, where are you? What's your security, how, where you're staying this night and where you're going to play from that night. I think that also has a factor, but Niemi kind of knew his role and knew what was going to happen if Price went down. He's no all-star goalie to me. He's the same old guy that I know, the same old guy that worn quite a few jerseys in his lifetime in the NHL. So I think that should be quite the goal fest, guys. I'm recommending a little bit smaller on the puck line, but I do like the over as my official play as well in this game. I mean, just looking at the last couple of games, or the matchup head to head between these two teams, Penguins are 4-1 in the last 5 meetings. But look, it's trends to the under, and I think that's because you look at Murray, you look at Fleury, you look at Price in the past, but these two goalies mixed with the Habs defense that they have right now. I mean, it's kind of funny. They always had not really the best defense, and somehow they managed to make it even worse this year. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting to look at. It's gross. I don't even like watching Habs games these days. I have to do it. I sit through a couple of them. I tune in every now and then, but this team is not a team that's gonna be able to do anything against this Pittsburgh Penguins team. I'm telling you. I don't care if anyone says motivation is not a good excuse or a good way to look at some things. Sometimes you look at a game, you look at a way a team lost last night, and it's absolute bullshit. And Pittsburgh is going to be fired up. They are a way better team. They are on a complete different level that Montreal is right now. And I think this should be a very high scoring game. And I think in the process, Pittsburgh will cover the puck line. Montreal has nothing in the cards. I mean, their record speaks for itself. 3-7 in their last 10 versus the Metropolitan. They're 10-25 in their last 35 overall games. 1-5 in their last 6 Thursday games, and there's nothing really more to say, boys. I just think that this team has no caliber, has no chance against this Pittsburgh Penguins team. Like Dana likes to say sometimes, this is clearly just the better team. And sometimes you got to just look at it, look at the paper, look what the stats tell you, and look. Plus 160 on the puck line, I'll happily take that.
All right, plus 160 on the puck line and the over. You like both of those in that game, over 6, Pittsburgh and Montreal. Let's see, we got Dana also involved here in the Pittsburgh-Montreal battle tonight. Dana, what do we see happening here?
Well, I have to be honest. I mean, there's nothing that warms the heart more than to hear a Habs fan just rip on his own team. I mean, this is something that I could listen to just about all day long. So you guys all made great points. And the other thing, too, is I'm handicapping this game based on the fact that that Jari and Niemi is going to be in net tonight. So that's my expected matchup. The other thing, too, is I got asked last night, how do you handle, back-to-back situations? And I know sometimes we talk about it in the way that we think a team is going to be tired, so that's going to create turnovers, which is going to lead to offense, or we think a team is not going to be tired, which is also going to lead to offense because they handled their roster better the night before. And if you look at the Penguins, especially their defensemen, and that's who I really look at. Did Mike Sullivan manage their minutes last night? Yeah, he absolutely did. And then I'm not going to go up and down the box score, but if you do look at it, there's guys that are in the 20s except Chris Letang, who he sent out there to kind of give his normal amount of minutes out there to give some stability, and then he gave a lot of the guys that would get in that 20 to 23 range. Most of them are under 20 minutes. So he did manage the game, knowing that they were playing in back-to-back games tonight. So anyway, as far as the total is concerned on this, I've said this 100 times. I cannot go against a team that's got a 90-point guy like Phil Kessel on his third line, on their third line, like the Penguins do. This team is loaded offensively, and we're looking at things from a totals perspective. So honestly, I could care less what happened last night. I hope they do have a defensive breakdown again. But for me, I would rather be on the side of the team that I know can put up 6 by themselves rather than cross their fingers that the opposing goaltender, and in this case, Niemi, stands on his head against one of the best offensive teams in the league. That's not a position that I want to be going into headed with my money backing this game. This is a team that has not scored less than 3 goals in back-to-back games since December 31st. So they're consistent offensively. And now they face Montreal, who obviously, like Andrew said, is not very good defensively. And to me, Claude Julien's trying to play his system with guys that just can't play it well. They're not very good defensively. They started to get some production from their top three lines. As long as I know and I feel confident that I can get something, like Galchenyuk has 8 points in his last 10 games. They're getting something, not just, one or two lines that I can rely on. That's a little bit of a sign of hope offensively for Montreal. But I think pace of play tonight is going to be great. I don't think you're going to see anything as a, because they played last night. I don't think it's going to affect tonight's game. In fact, I think the pace of play is going to be even more. And I think that gives a team like Montreal that may not create a lot of their own chances, will give them more opportunities to score than they would on a normal basis. So I'm going over the total tonight as well.
All right, over 6, Pittsburgh, Montreal. For Dana Lane, we'll see if Pittsburgh can right the ship following a frustrating loss in which they had multiple leads and couldn't hold either one last night against the New York Rangers. All right, next game we've got Chicago, Winnipeg, 11-12. Winnipeg minus 180, total 6 shaded to the under. And boy, I'm really interested over the total in this game at 6, but you look at these totals trends for these two teams on the road and home. Chicago's been a big-time over team on the road. Winnipeg, of course, I've mentioned this many times all season, a really strong over team at home. Sets up well for an over, but this Winnipeg situation with Paul Stastny kind of bothers me a little bit. We'll have to see what's going to happen with his status tonight. He is currently listed as questionable lower body injury that he suffered. He kept him out of the last game, actually, against the Nashville Predators. Not sure if he's going to play tonight. Michael Hutchinson, a situation where he got injured last game. Connor Hellebuck had to come in relief against the Nashville Predators, a game the Jets lost 3-1. But I like the setup. You got Winnipeg that got some shots, got some chances, couldn't bury them. The last couple games they've had some opportunities to score goals. They've sort of, been silenced a little bit finally, this high potent offense, but back home against a suspect team like Chicago, especially defensively, their goaltending is suspect, whether it's Forsberg or Berube, it doesn't matter. I don't trust either one of those guys in terms of trying to stop a team like Winnipeg. So I'm very much interested, even though I know Winnipeg's cashed 6 straight unders going into this game. I'm very interested in the over. Again, Chicago, a good over team on the road. Winnipeg, a good over team at home. I do want to check into the Stastny situation, though. But for me, I'm still likely going to go ahead and go over the total in this game. Alex B. Smith, Chicago, Winnipeg, go for it. What you got here?
Yeah, I got to hit you with the old not so fast, my friend. I'm looking at this under here because these two teams, for some reason, they're in the same division, but they're not really rivals. It's not like the old school Blackhawks Jets of the 80s and 90s, but these two teams get really physical with each other whenever they play, and it's uncharacteristic of the Hawks, who aren't really that physical of a team. And even for the Jets now, they've become more of a skill-based team. They weren't the big bruising team that they were 2-3 seasons ago. So for whatever reason, there's bad blood there, and it seems where we see a lot of hits and sometimes a lot of dumb penalties taken too. So obviously, when you look at that, if you see dumb penalties, you get more power play chances. That would help to the over. But here, it's just you got the Jets 5 straight games under the total. They've scored 3 goals or fewer in 6 straight games. Except the Hawks, they're Jekyll and Hyde not only on defense but of course offense too. They've got a couple injury issues as well. Anthony Duclair out indefinitely with a knee injury. Brandon Saad is questionable for this game. 2 guys that have been quiet for the most part, but are key pieces in the dwindling Hawks offense right now. And there's a laundry list of names that are questionable tonight for the Jets. So you kind of wonder, all right, this is a game. Yeah, the Jets, they're just 8 points back in Nashville for the division lead. Chances are they're not going to really have have to make a big run to catch up with them. Playing a Hawks team that's completely out of it, they might, take it a little bit easier in this game. I think the under here is the play, especially at 6.
Yeah, I'd be careful laying minus 180 with Winnipeg here too. I mean, that loss against Nashville, that was their last stab at the division, and to lose that and now return home against a feeble Chicago team, you wonder where their heads are for this hockey game, Winnipeg. So this is not a night I'm interested in Winnipeg in any form, the puck line. Like I said, I was interested over the total, but you're right. There's a lot of injuries. You mentioned Saad and Duclair on the Chicago side. I kind of want Stastny in there for Winnipeg. So this is a maybe, maybe not. This is a we'll see. It's a lean right now. I was planning on going ahead with it, but I want to see these injury situations play out no more after the morning skate. Dana Lane, Chicago, Winnipeg. What do you have in this game for us?
Yeah, I don't love this either, but I do like the plus price. So obviously it's been a disappointing year in Chicago, and I still think, as we said last time, I still think they have plenty of guys that can scare you. I mean, anytime I still see Taves there, and I still see Kane there, and I mean, they in their last 10 games or so. I mean, if you go back in their recent form, I mean, they've been as good as you could have ever expect from this team, and as far as a team that's motivated, and we know at this point in time, especially for Chicago, I mean, this is a team that is right up against the salary cap. In fact, I think they have like $6,000 under the cap right now. I don't know how they're going to maneuver that, but there's a lot of guys here that are trying to show that they belong in this organization, and unless they can Chicago decides to get rid of their two top-heavy contracts, or they can find a way to alleviate themselves by getting rid of Seabrook. I don't know how they're going to manage this cap going into next year, because there just isn't a lot of guys, UFAs or RFAs, that are going to give them some space if they let him go. But um, you know, they still seem pretty aggressive to me. I don't know, Alex, how you feel about that, but even see defensemen getting up into the play. I see them, working hard, and nobody's trying to tank games or wait till next season. And then on the defensive end, I really just don't think that they have the horses to compete on a nightly basis. And they're giving up almost 3.5 goals per game, especially in the last month defensively. I don't think that they've played very well as we might expect them to be at this time of year. But I think that there is going to be a sense of opportunity for young guys. I like when there's injuries, honestly. If I'm betting the over, I like young guys coming in and giving 110% and hoping that maybe they'll get their chance. I like the injuries for the sake of the fact that it might create turnovers and create opportunities. I don't get too high or too low about injuries, because I just think that you're going to get a guy that's replacing those guys that are going to be absolutely hungry. But to me, that this is a Jets team that I still rarely play under the total. I don't think I'm going to start tonight. I don't love the play, but if you're going to give me a plus price, I definitely can see the Jets at least in that 3 to 4 range. So or 4 range at least. I got to get them to 4 if you like Winnipeg. But could Chicago score 3 to get us over? Yeah, I can see that scenario. So I think it's worth a play with the plus price. But again, it's not my best bet on the Ice Guys show.
All right, so yeah, so it kind of sounds like me with the over in this game, Dana. It's a lukewarm over recommendation with the Chicago-Winnipeg game tonight in this one. Alex on the other side and the under, and he's actually brought up the points about all the injuries, and again, a couple skill guys for Chicago up. But again, and I'd be leery about Winnipeg laying this price. Again, like I said, they've lost that game against Nashville. It's their last shot at maybe catching them for the division. They're now 7 points back. They're not catching them now. Or 8 points back. It's not going to happen. So again, this is another team where you have to gauge where's the motivation to keep going and playing hard moving forward for Winnipeg. Now with the division out of reach, we'll see. It's a very tricky spot for Winnipeg. They've played big games, big opponents lately. Now you come home, face Chicago. We'll see if they have the mental fortitude to get past that and still get the job done. This is a playoff game right here. Colorado, St. Louis, this next game, 13-14. St. Louis minus 165, total 5.5, shaded to the under. These are two teams right on the periphery of the postseason in the Western Conference. They need points desperately. Should be a very interesting game. Two teams that need the points badly tonight. Look at this, 2 wins in a row for St. Louis. They beat LA in shocking fashion, 7-2. They crush Anaheim 4-2 the other night. Now all of a sudden we're back to St. Louis laying $1.70 at home again. They're back to those old expensive Blues prices on home ice. And here we go again after 2 wins, but 2 very good wins. There maybe is a pulse with the St. Louis Blues after all. We'll see. Can they keep it going here? 2 wins on the road against LA and Anaheim. The offense has sprung to life. So right now, to me, there's value with the Blues, not so much tonight. There's also value over the total with the Blues. 5.5, minus 105. I'm going to ride it. This team now had no offense, none, 0 to speak of for weeks. They suddenly do. They're feeling it. You got some guys that are chipping in offensively the last few games for the Blues that had been silent for weeks on end. Score 4 against St. Louis. Score 7 on the weekend against LA. They're feeling it right now. And because they went into such a bad funk offensively, you've got some deflated totals to work with St. Louis. Look at the Anaheim game the other night. That total was 5 because obviously they think of Anaheim as a defensive team, which they are, but they also think of St. Louis as a team that can't score goals. But they did. They did against LA. It carried over into that last game against Anaheim. I think you've got residual value right now with St. Louis finally showing some confidence again to put the puck in the net with the over. So that's what I'm going to go with tonight. Going to ride this a little bit. They've had 2 straight overs since they've rediscovered some offensive form. The St. Louis Blues. Let's see if they can go for 3 straight. Over 5.5 for me, minus 105. Colorado, St. Louis. Let's see. Is that the only guy that had that game? Oh, Alex as well. I have Avalanche and Blues as well. He's got that on his card as well. Alex, what do you see here in this hockey game tonight?
Like you said, both these teams are kind of on the cusp of the breaking point of making grabbing a wild card spot here. Both these teams are mediocre hockey teams at best. I mean, yeah, they've had some solid runs. We saw Colorado, get hot a couple months ago, and they kind of fell back on the stretch. Jonathan Bernier was the guy kind of carrying them along for a while. He's now dealing with some concussion issues. And you look at the St. Louis team. They said finally stringing some wins together, 2 wins against Anaheim and LA, but now they're coming back from 4-game road trip. Normally, usually like to fade teams coming back off of that West Coast, that California trip, but they're 9-0-1 the last 10 meetings against Colorado. So they found a way to, they seem to have figured out the Avalanche more often than not, obviously. But that price, obviously, like I said, now they're gonna be laying, $1.60, $1.65. This is where I stress this time of year, start looking at the regulation of 3-way lines. You can find them at, St. Louis at $1.05 or $1.10 if you think they're going to be able to close it out within 60 minutes. So that's the side I look at here. I think St. Louis will be able to string it together, get their 3rd straight win. But I would look to play it on the regulation line rather than try and lay a goal and a half or lay the big price.
All right, St. Louis regulation line for Alex with that one. Avalanche Blues. Huge game in the Western Conference postseason race. Huge game for both teams as they try to slide their way in. At Nashville, Arizona, 15-16. Nashville minus 170 on the road here. Total 5.5 shade to the under. Just buyer beware with Nashville. I see some chatter in the chat right now talking about maybe Arizona's a live dog. They could be. I mean, Arizona's been an honest effort. Feisty efforts, competitive effort lately, every single night it seems. And Nashville off a huge home win against Winnipeg that pretty much seals the fact that they're going to win that Central Division. And just a little concerned here coming off that kind of big game, big win against Arizona, who's not going to roll over, who has not shown you they're going to roll over for anyone. So I don't fault anyone taking the Arizona. I don't personally bet against Nashville anymore, so that's my reason for staying out of it. But I can't fault anyone for taking a shot with the big dog here. You sometimes have to with this time of year. Maybe you got to take a shot with Arizona or Chicago, or like I did with New Jersey last night. You got to take a shot sometimes with these big dogs. They're going to pay off every now and then. It's just a question of just picking the right spot and the right time to do it. Detroit, LA to wrap up the show, 17-18. Then we'll get to best bets. LA minus 240 here in this game. Huge favorite total. 5.5 shade to the under. Of course, Detroit's gone down the tank. It's a situation where all of a sudden defensively they're struggling. They're giving up goals left and right. That's not very good. Jimmy Howard and Jared Coro are not goalies that have much confidence. Of course, the group in front of them's not playing all that well right now. LA's not usually the team I lay a goal and a half with, but I did the other night against Vancouver, and you better believe I'm considering doing that tonight here in this game against Detroit, because I think Detroit starting to slide down to being every bit as bad as some of these teams like Vancouver and Buffalo and teams like that. I mean, they're starting to really tail off. Defensively has tailed off. Usually when you lack intensity, it shows up on the defensive end, and it's shown up lately for the Detroit Red Wings. So I think kind of looking at a puck line bet here. We are very short for time, Andrew. I know you're on this game, so very quickly, what do you got, Red Wings Kings?
Yeah, in this game, I decided to go with a team total. I've been trying those quite a bit more these days, looking at that a little bit more, just because this is one of those things where I know what I can expect a little bit from Los Angeles guys, but I don't know what I can expect from Detroit. And I think they've been, the past couple games for them, they've been known for giving up high amounts of goals. They've been known for being sloppy in their own end. Their goaltending has been very weak. On the other end for LA right now, they've been scoring quite a bit, and they're trending towards the over as well. And that's because they've been carrying the load on the over. So we're getting plus money at plus 110, over 3.5 team total for LA. I just think the way that they're playing right now, the way that they're kind of moving forward right now, that they have a complete mismatch against Detroit in this game, and I think they're really going to walk all over them guys, because this is one of those games where even though it is a big mismatch, it's one that LA has to take care of, has to look smooth and really get the job done. So I think coming into this game, we have to expect LA to be able to put numbers up and surpass that 3.5 goal mark.
All right, team total over for the LA Kings for that game. Andrew McGinnis says they hope to add to the struggles of the Detroit Red Wings. Hopefully there's no struggles when it comes to best bets for the Thursday card. That's what we got on tap now to wrap up the show. Alex B. Smith, let's start with you. Your best bet for Thursday.
I'm going with the Florida Panthers at home. Like I said, it's a team that have won 8 of their last 9 at home, catching a Boston team that's got some injury issues on that blue line. Like I said, Panthers fighting for their playoff lives. They need all the points they can get, and they're going to need some help as well. So I think there's going to be a inspired effort from the home team tonight at a plus price. I'm going with the Florida Panthers.
All right, Florida as a home underdog. Best bet for Alex. Dana, best bet.
New York Islanders, anytime they're involved, I especially recently, I've kind of gone over to the over boat. It's definitely over for me. This is an Islander team whose last 30 games at home, 20 of them have produced over winners, including a push, and they're 29-3 in the last 32 games versus teams with a winning record. So I'm going over tonight in the Islanders Pittsburgh game.
All right, over with the Capitals and Islanders. Best bet for Dana.
Capitals, sorry.
Capitals, yeah. I knew what you meant.
Sorry.
Yeah, I definitely knew what you meant. Andrew, best bet.
655.
Yeah, look, guys, I've missed out on far too many opportunities to capitalize against this Montreal Canadiens team, and tonight I'm not going to let it happen. This is a complete mismatch. I think that Pittsburgh, I don't care if they're on the back-to-back. Tristan Jarry, I think, is an upcoming goalie. I mean, he's someone that's trying to prove his roster spot. Niemi's been looking all right, bearable for this team, but their defense is non-comparable to the offense that's going to be coming at them for a full 60 minutes tonight. So Pittsburgh puck line for me at plus 160 against my struggling Habs.
All right, Pittsburgh puck line for Andrew McGinnis tonight. His best bet. I am going to go with Columbus here, plus 105 against the Philadelphia Flyers. I like their form. They're on a roll. Philadelphia, they had one win and then they go right back to losing again. So Columbus in good form at a plus price, no problem with the Jackets. Plus 105 is my best bet for Thursday. That's going to wrap up the show. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the NCAA tournament. I know you're all going to be into that today. The madness begins. Should be a lot of fun, but don't forget hockey. We'll still be here 3 days a week bringing you the Ice Guys. Our next show Saturday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Until then, for Alex, Andrew, and Dana, I'm Ian Cameron for Sportsbook Review. Enjoy the Thursday night NHL card, and we'll see you again on Saturday.